Today, Harold, you were on our spectrum of thing, and you mentioned one thing that I questioned at the time, and I want to know what you meant by a landscape cannot be true or false.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because I would say a Salvador Dali surrealistic landscape with a tree floating above a mountain can be symbolic and powerful, but it's not true to life. But a landscape, whether it's beautiful or disgruntled, can be very true. But it perhaps doesn't teach at the level of a...
There's a difference between truth and accuracy. I mean, if you say that Salvador Dali's landscape is not accurate, you're speaking reportorially. You're reporting on the facts of the creation, that gravity can't be violated that way. So that's not an accurate. But I wouldn't say it's untrue. It's another way of putting the creation in some sort of compositional shape. But that isn't quite what I meant about true or false. And at that point in the lecture, I was really rushing myself.
Yeah.
What I was wanting to say was that in the visual arts, you have certain portrayals that contain no deeds at all. A landscape is not a deed, unless you would talk about the agrarian action taken on the creation. Then you can take yourself into a discussion of the social impact of government's regulation on the family farm.
Right.
You can do that.
But by then you're using words anyway.
Yeah. What?
You're using
words anyway.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly right. Then there are deeded art forms where you might have a battle scene. That's a deed. And there is more of what you would call truth content in a battle scene, because you can talk a lot about the condition of humankind.
I see.
And then there are worded and deeded art forms that, for instance, drama, theater is a wonderful consortium of words and deeds. A novel is a wonderful consortium of deeds explained by words. The closer you get to words and deeds in the arts, the more you can talk about their ability to speak truth. The further away you get from words and deeds in the art forms, that is, into dance and into music, over here at the opposite extreme, you have no content that's worded or deeded in music per se that can tell you anything about the truth. And I lost it somewhere in the middle when I tried to deal with the visual arts too quickly.
I see that music over there cannot make a statement, cannot
make a truth statement.
Right.
But it has to be true to itself.
We bring some things to it
Yes.
that are very powerful.
Yes.
If you go to the piano, dum, da dum, dum.
Yeah.
Well, we all know that
Yeah.
suspense is there, but I think that truth is not just human truth.
Mm-hmm.
So Ansel Adams, is that his name, the photographer?
Yeah.
I mean, there is truth in those landscapes and mountain scenery, even though there are no humans in it. There's truth of God's creation. There can be, I think, truth of balance and texture and color and things that speak to us of things that can be understood and can be discussed and things like that. There's no human encounter. There's no tragedy resolve, and so
It's truthful about itself, but it's interesting to me that to make your point, you chose the most representational kind of photography there is. And you didn't use the word truth with regard to Dali the same way you used it with regard to Ansel Adams, even though both obviously contain pieces of things out of the creation.
And our representation. But see, I think the Dali is actually dangerous because it denies truth.
No.
Yes. Oh, yes.
No,
Of course
it denies the laws of gravity. It doesn't deny truth because there's no moral issue at stake.
I've read too much Rookmacher.
You have read way too much.
Yeah.
You have been Schaeferized out of your tree.
Or the Picasso
Our goal today is to get Chip back in his tree.
Okay, here's a Picasso flower arrangement. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And beautiful vase, probably a vase. Daisies. Okay. Does it have no truth value because there are no people in it? There's no.
No. It has truth value by being true to itself in the way it's put together.
Okay.
In other words, I began by saying that all art forms proceed propositionally. You have to get from A to Z, whether it's Picasso or Dali, whether it's Bach or Rembrandt or Cormac McCarthy, you have to get to A to Z in a way that makes the sojourn from A to Z sensible. Mm-hmm. So the truthfulness in a Picasso cubistic painting, is the truthfulness with which he went from A to Z cubistically. It has nothing to do with the portrayal of moral truth. Art is true to itself by being internally consistent in the way it propositionalizes what it sets out to do in finishing its task. It's not whether Picasso is more representational than Ansel Adams. It's whether each has been truthful with regard to how they follow through from A to Z in the vocabulary they've chosen.
Otherwise, you end up with a morality where Leonardo da Vinci's work is more moral than Salvador Dali's or Picasso's because it's more accurate.
It's not because it's more accurate. No, I understand what you're saying. I think I understand where I took the argument the wrong way.
Yeah, I think another way to look at it, I said this in Music Through the Eyes of Faith. I think I did. But God could be argued as the first abstract artist because in the first days of creation, and when he made the first elephant, he didn't have one to represent. He didn't have one to imitate. Therefore, the first elephant, with nothing to back it up, was abstract. And the only reality that we can attribute to elephants is that there are a lot more that look like them. So I could argue that the history of art has been made backwards by a too idealistic view of realism based on the mistaken idea that the purpose of art is to represent rather than the purpose of art is to think up something that nobody has quite thought up that way and in that configuration. And because God did it from all of it from nothing, he was the first abstract artist. So there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you bring up a good point because a lot of people they'll see a Picasso, they'll see a Picasso and they'll say, "Oh, my 5-year-old can do that." And I always want to say, man, your 5-year-old must be a spectacularly imaginative 5-year-old.
Yes, and a great composer. To be able to put those shapes together.
Yeah, and the reality is that Picasso's imagination, his ability to think in painting and to think up painting, to think up perspective, and to pull that, pull those realities together.
Here's another way to look at it. A humbled artist who does these Picasso-like things, or is purely abstract, in a way says, "Dear Lord, there isn't anything that I can imagine that you haven't imagined first." This abstraction that appears not to look like anything in the creation probably has a counterpart in some molecular thing that nobody's seen yet. I cannot out-imagine you. Dear Lord, may I have permission to change things around and shift things that you have so wonderfully made in your creation. I've been made in your image. Can I just move it around a little bit as an offering to you without saying...
I have no problem with that. I'm not a representational only.
Well, you said Dali was dangerous.
Yeah.
I think
he might be dangerous because he was a bad artist, not because he was a cubist.
No, not because he was cubist. It's the surrealism, the fact that there are things about the truth of creation that are denied or are
they're rearranged.
The floating chair.
They're rearranged.
The lamp with an arm or a leg. It has this idea of a warped reality, not an imaginative.
Yeah, how would that be different?
How do you handle this?
How would that be different than Picasso twisting the rules of reflection and refraction.
Yeah.
Refraction.
And we haven't even got into hurricanes yet.
Yeah.
As God.
How is it different? I'm eager on this.
Let
This
me-
is interesting.
okay.
This is fascinating.
I'm going to pull this back to a church music argument for just a moment. Some dear brothers in where I had some ministry opportunities before had a Christian band, and they were terrific. But their goal was to completely mimic the original cut on the CD. I mean, their goal, they worked tirelessly. Every stroke of the drumstick, every lick on the guitar, every slide on the bass, was the idea was to absolutely mimic this other performance with our voices. Okay, I find that very fulfilling. Harold, you could write a hindemith composition by copying,
Sure.
Okay,
By imitative
counterpoint, and you could do an absolutely beautiful job of it. And most connoisseurs of good art would say, sounds like Hindemith, big deal. Hindemith did that. In fact, it sounds just like it. Or a Bach chorale or something like that. There's something about taking the fabric of what we've done and doing something new with it, or doing something more profound, or focusing it at a different place. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going with this, except the fact that we are craftsmen, we're artists, and we have a goal not to focus it all back on the craft, but to focus it to the glory of God in Christ, the love for His church, the sweetness of the gospel, in ways that will highlight those things.
You've moved from A to
R.
10. You haven't even stayed in the alphabet with that. You've moved from letters to numbers. When suddenly you just threw in the spiritual syrup at the end about doing this to the glory of God. No. I don't know what you're getting at.
What I was trying to get at was these ideas of art teaching and pushing and reflecting. Is total uniqueness always a virtue?
No. Unless you define uniqueness as something that is not an exact replicate of anything else. Then mediocre art, the worst possible kind of art, is unique in that there's nothing like it. Because unique means nothing like it.
Yeah.
It's not really unique, or rather unique. It's unique because there's nothing like it. That doesn't make it good, doesn't make it bad. Uniqueness is not a criterion for anything other than some kind of originality, no matter its quality.
Right.
So, yes, all artists are unique in the sense in which they attempt not to replicate. The bad artists are those who believe that their job is to replicate, so that the I'm going to be crass here, the Thomas Kincaid connoisseur can look at that and say, oh yeah, that's my farmhouse. I want one just like that.
Yeah.
And a false view of
pretty.
Everything is given, and everything has been sold short, including the person who's going to spend $250 on that, when it isn't even painted by Kincaid, but by one of his disciples who's been trained to clone him, and on and on and on. That is art at its worst, because it has moved from representation to replication, and it's given a false spirit of reality by Disneyfying it. and the Disneyfication of reality in bad representative art is highlighted by a Thomas Kincaid. Representative art, as shown in the works of Vermeer, is still unique because if you looked at the girl with the pearl earring in the studio, she wouldn't look like the girl in the painting. He has only stylized what he saw. Yeah. It's not representative nor replicative in a tight sense. And so you just keep moving over to the point where you create something that says, boy, I've never seen anything like that before in my life. And then you say, come here, I want to show you something. And you pull out the latest picture from the Hubble telescope. And you find out that that is a stylization of something out there in a galaxy. We cannot out-imagine God.
That's right.
There is no such thing in that way, in that sense, as abstraction. There's only stylization and the individuation through style of this, that, or the other thing.
And for the record, this makes 2 straight years in which any conversation I've had with regards to Christianity and the arts has brought up Thomas Kincaid.
Really? Is that right?
It's inescapable.
Well, it's tragic. I say with kindness what has been put over on especially Christians who find out somewhere along the line that he is a Christian, which makes his art all the more sacrosanct. And I please, audience, try to understand that I'm saying this with love and kindness. I'm not trying to be sarcastic or vitriolic. I'll save that for Chip here when we're out for coffee, and then I'll get sarcastic.
I'll share something about how my own art naivete was. Earlier in life, Doris and I, a couple of years into our marriage, there was a wonderful artist that we wanted to commission a piece because he needed money. He was a struggling graduate student. And he painted us a glorious painting, but he made us promise that we'd be 100% satisfied. And he had used negative space on this painting, parts of the canvas that were unpainted. Well, I didn't know what to think about that. I said, this is not really what we wanted, and we wanted something we could recognize, So he redid it and did something that we were too embarrassed to say, no, we don't like that, And now I would give anything to have that original piece because it was gorgeous.
The negative space.
And there was a third of it that was unpainted, but it was part of the composition. And now I think to myself, what a dodo.
Well, here's the interesting thing about you, Chip. In all of your work, you just keep growing and growing. I'm serious. Your humble servanthood, your ability to take flack, your ability to face things that are anomalous in the church, the servant spirit you have in articulating a Christ that is so alive in your heart, you can almost see your shirt move. That's remarkable, and I will always admire you for that.
Well, thank you.
Always.
Yeah. Well, you've given me a lot of lecture points. I'll go on and talk for 15 minutes on 2 words that you shared with me.